The moment 79-year-old Margaret Sullivan walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, everyone notices something heartbreaking. She's wearing a winter coat in late spring, not because of the temperature, but because it's the only coat she owns now. Everything else she owned, every possession she accumulated over 79 years of life, is gone. Her son, 42-year-old Brian Sullivan, sold her house while she was living in it, took every penny of the $280,000 profit, and placed her in a state-funded nursing facility where she shares a room with 5 other women and hasn't had a private moment in 8 months. But Brian doesn't look guilty. He looks annoyed that he has to be here at all. His 9-year-old son Tommy sits in the gallery, confused about why Grandma Margaret looks so different than she used to, why she looks so sad, why Daddy won't let him sit next to her. And when Judge Caprio, the 76-year-old judge famous for his compassion toward the elderly, asks Brian to explain his actions, the younger man makes the worst mistake of his life. "Your Honor, no offense, but you're from another generation. You don't understand how expensive life is today. That house was just sitting there. My mother doesn't need it anymore. I have a family to support, college funds to build. Someone had to make the practical decision." The insult hangs in the air like a physical presence. Judge Caprio's expression transforms from compassionate to something much colder. Margaret begins crying silently, her shoulders shaking. And young Tommy, who's been sitting quietly trying to be good like his father told him, suddenly speaks up in a voice that carries across the entire courtroom. "But Dad, you promised Grandma would live with us. You promised. If you believe family loyalty should mean something, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will restore your faith that justice still exists." It's a Tuesday morning in Providence Municipal Court, and the gallery is packed as usual. People come from all over Rhode Island, some even from neighboring states, just to watch Judge Frank Caprio administer justice. There's something about the way he treats people, with dignity, with compassion, with genuine interest in their stories, that has made him beloved not just in Providence, but around the world. The bailiff, Officer Marcus Chen, has been working with Judge Caprio for 12 years. He knows when a case is going to be routine and when it's going to be something that stays with everyone who witnesses it. Today, looking at the case file for Sullivan v. Sullivan, Officer Chen has a feeling this will be one of those cases people remember. The case on paper seems straightforward. Margaret Sullivan, age 79, is suing her son, Brian Sullivan, age 42, for elder financial abuse, breach of power of attorney, and fraud related to the sale of her home and her placement in a nursing facility. But Officer Chen has learned over the years that the most devastating cases are often the ones that look simple on paper. Judge Caprio enters the courtroom at exactly 9:30 a.m., as he does every morning. He's 76 years old now, with silver hair and kind eyes that have seen thousands of human stories unfold before his bench. He moves a little slower than he used to, but his mind is as sharp as ever, and his commitment to justice has never wavered. "All rise," Officer Chen announces, and the courtroom stands as one. Judge Caprio takes his seat, adjusts his glasses, and looks out at the gallery with the warm smile that has made him famous. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Let's begin." The first case is called, and as it concludes, Officer Chen prepares to call the Sullivan case. He glances toward the back of the courtroom where Margaret Sullivan sits, and what he sees makes his heart hurt. She's so small, this elderly woman. She sits with her hands folded in her lap, wearing that winter coat despite the warm spring temperature outside. Her hair is neatly combed but clearly hasn't been professionally cut in months. Her shoes are old but polished, the kind of care that speaks to a lifetime of taking pride in her appearance, even when resources are limited. Next to her attorney sits Brian Sullivan. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Brian wears a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than his mother's monthly Social Security check. His shoes gleam, his watch catches the light, expensive, the kind that says, "I've made it." And sitting 2 rows behind his father is 9-year-old Tommy Sullivan. The boy keeps turning around to look at his grandmother, his face full of confusion and sadness. Every time he tries to get up to go to her, his father's wife, Tommy's mother, puts a gentle hand on his shoulder and shakes her head. Case number 2024 CV8847, Officer Chen announces. Margaret Sullivan versus Brian Sullivan, elder financial abuse and fraud. Margaret stands slowly, her attorney helping her to her feet. Brian stands quickly, impatiently, like he has somewhere more important to be. They walk forward to their respective tables, and Judge Caprio watches carefully. He's already read the case file 3 times, and what he read disturbed him deeply. But Judge Caprio believes in hearing every story directly from the people involved. Documents tell you facts. People tell you truth. Good morning, Judge Caprio says warmly, looking first at Margaret. Mrs. Sullivan, thank you for being here today. Margaret nods, unable to speak. Her hands are shaking. Judge Caprio's voice softens even more. Mrs. Sullivan, please sit down if you'd prefer. I want you to be comfortable. Thank you, Your Honor, Margaret whispers, and gratefully sinks back into the chair her attorney holds for her. Judge Caprio turns his attention to Brian. Mr. Sullivan, good morning. Good morning, Your Honor, Brian responds. His tone is professional, confident, but there's an edge to it, an impatience. Judge Caprio opens the case file and reads aloud for the courtroom record. Mrs. Sullivan, you're alleging that your son, Mr. Brian Sullivan, obtained power of attorney over your affairs under false pretenses, sold your home without your true consent, kept the profits of $280,000, and placed you in a state-funded nursing facility against your wishes. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Margaret says, her voice barely audible. And Mr. Sullivan, you deny these allegations? Your Honor, I absolutely deny that I did anything wrong, Brian says firmly. My mother is elderly. She was living alone in that house. It wasn't safe. The house needed expensive repairs. I made the responsible decision to sell it and place her somewhere she could receive proper care. Judge Caprio nods slowly. We'll examine the details carefully. Mrs. Sullivan's attorney, please proceed. Margaret's attorney, a patient woman in her 50s named Jennifer Reyes, stands and approaches the witness stand where Margaret now sits. Mrs. Sullivan, Attorney Reyes begins gently, can you tell Judge Caprio about your house? The one on Elmwood Avenue? Margaret takes a shaky breath. I bought that house in 1987. I was 42 years old. I'd been saving money since Brian was born, working 2 jobs sometimes, putting away whatever I could. Her voice grows a little stronger as she talks about the house, about the dream it represented. I worked as a housekeeper at Providence General Hospital for 30 years. Sometimes I'd work double shifts, nights and weekends, anything to save money. My husband Daniel died when Brian was only 3 years old. Construction accident. So it was just me and Brian. She glances at her son, who's looking down at his phone. I wanted Brian to have a good life. I wanted him to go to college, to have opportunities I never had. And I wanted us to have a home, a real home, that nobody could take away from us. And you achieved that dream, Attorney Reyes says softly. You bought the house. Yes. Margaret smiles for the first time since entering the courtroom, though tears run down her face. August 12, 1987. I'll never forget that day. Brian was 17. We moved in together, and I told him, someday, son, this will be yours, but for now it's ours. What happened to that house, Mrs. Sullivan? The smile vanishes. Brian took it. In the gallery, several people shift uncomfortably. Tommy is staring at his grandmother with wide eyes, taking in every word. Can you explain the circumstances? Attorney Reyes asks. Margaret nods, wiping her eyes. Last year, I fell in my kitchen, broke my wrist. Brian came to the hospital and was so worried, so attentive. He said I shouldn't live alone anymore. He said I should come live with him and his family. Did you want that? Oh, yes. Margaret's face lights up briefly. I'd been hoping for years that Brian would invite me. I love my grandson Tommy so much. I wanted to be close to him, to help raise him like I raised Brian. What happened next? Brian said that before I moved in, I should sign some papers. Power of attorney, he called it. He said it was just to make things easier, so he could help me with bills and medical appointments. He said it was temporary, just while I recovered from my broken wrist. Did you read the documents before signing? Margaret shakes her head, ashamed. No, I trusted my son completely. He's all I have in the world. What happened after you signed? Brian never came to pick me up from the hospital. Instead, an ambulance took me to Meadowbrook State Facility. I thought it was temporary, just for rehabilitation. But days became weeks, and Brian kept saying, "Soon, Mom, soon." Her voice breaks completely now. Then one day, about 3 weeks after I got there, another resident showed me a newspaper listing. My house, my home, was for sale. I called Brian, and he said it was necessary. He said the house needed too much work, that I didn't need it anymore, that he was making the responsible choice. Did you authorize him to sell your house? No, never. I begged him not to. I cried and begged, but he said the papers I signed gave him the right to make decisions for me. Judge Caprio, who has been listening intently, leans forward. Mrs. Sullivan, what happened to the money from the sale of your house? Margaret looks directly at her son. I never saw any of it, Your Honor, not $1. Brian shifts in his seat but says nothing. The house sold for $280,000, Attorney Rise states. Mrs. Sullivan, did your son ever discuss with you what would happen to that money? He said it would go toward my care. But Meadowbrook is state-funded. It doesn't cost anything, or rather, it's paid for by Medicaid. I didn't need $280,000 for care. Where do you believe that money went? Margaret's voice is hollow. I think Brian kept it. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Judge Caprio raises his hand for silence. Mrs. Sullivan, Judge Caprio says gently, can you describe your living conditions at Meadowbrook? And this is where Margaret Sullivan breaks down completely. Your Honor, Margaret begins, and her whole body is shaking now. I share a room with 5 other women. 6 beds in one room. There's no privacy. I can't sleep because there's always noise. Someone crying, someone confused, staff coming in and out all night. She takes a tissue from her attorney and tries to compose herself. The food it's not good. Everything comes on plastic trays, cold most of the time. I've lost 20 pounds since I've been there. Judge Caprio's expression hardens. How long have you been living at Meadowbrook? 8 months, Your Honor. 243 days. She's been counting. In 8 months, has your son visited you? Margaret's silence is answer enough, but she speaks anyway. 3 times. Once when he first brought me there. Once at Christmas because Tommy begged him. And once 2 weeks ago when he found out about this lawsuit. What about your grandson? Does Tommy visit? And here Margaret's face transforms with love and pain mixed together. Tommy comes every week, every Saturday morning. He takes 2 buses by himself. He's only 9 years old, and he comes to visit me. He brings me cookies his mother bakes. He tells me about school. He's the only thing that keeps me going. In the gallery, Tommy starts crying. His mother wraps an arm around him, but he's staring at his grandmother with complete devotion. Judge Caprio notices this and makes a note. Mrs. Sullivan, one more question. If you could have anything right now, what would it be? I want to go home, Your Honor. Her voice cracks with longing. I know my house is gone. I know I can't get it back, but I want to live somewhere with dignity. Somewhere I can have my own room, my own space. Somewhere I can see my grandson whenever I want. I don't want to die in that place, sleeping in a hallway surrounded by strangers. Sleeping in a hallway? Judge Caprio's voice sharpens. You said you share a room with 5 other women. There aren't enough beds, Your Honor. Sometimes, when they admit someone new, they have to put beds in the hallways temporarily. Last month, I slept in the hallway for 11 days. The courtroom is completely silent. Even the court reporter has stopped typing, her hands frozen above the keys. Judge Caprio turns to Brian Sullivan, and everyone can see the anger building behind his judicial restraint. Mr. Sullivan, I'd like to hear your response to your mother's testimony. Brian Sullivan stands, and everything about his posture communicates confidence bordering on arrogance. He's a businessman, someone used to boardrooms and negotiations, someone who believes he's the smartest person in any room. Your Honor, I understand this looks bad from my mother's perspective, but let me explain the reality of the situation. He doesn't look at his mother as he speaks. He addresses Judge Caprio as if this is simply a business matter requiring explanation. My mother is 79 years old. She was living alone in a house that was falling apart. The roof leaked. The electrical system was outdated, a fire hazard. The plumbing constantly had problems. I'm a real estate developer, Your Honor. I know what these repairs cost, and they would have been at least $80,000 to $100,000. Did you get estimates? Judge Caprio asks. I didn't need to. I've been in this business for 20 years. I know. Continue. My mother fell and broke her wrist. That was a warning sign. What if next time she fell down the stairs? What if there was a fire and she couldn't get out? As her only child, I had a responsibility to make sure she was safe. So you placed her in Meadowbrook. I placed her in a facility where she would receive round-the-clock care, where she wouldn't have to worry about cooking or cleaning or home maintenance, where medical staff are available if she needs them. And the house? The house was a financial liability, Your Honor. Keeping it made no sense. I sold it, invested the money, and I'm using it to ensure my mother's long-term care. Mrs. Sullivan testified that she's in a state-funded facility that doesn't require private payment. Where is the $280,000? Brian doesn't hesitate. It's in a managed investment account, growing. My mother could live another 10, 15 years. That money needs to last. May I see documentation of this account? For the first time, Brian hesitates. My attorney is working on gathering those documents. Judge Caprio's expression doesn't change, but everyone in the courtroom knows what that means. There is no account, or if there is, it's not what Brian claims. Mr. Sullivan, your mother testified that you promised she would live with you and your family. Is that true? I may have said something like that initially, but after evaluating the situation, it wasn't practical. My wife works. I work long hours. We have a son to raise. My mother needs more care than we can provide at home. Did you tell your mother the house was being sold? Yes. She testified she found out from a newspaper listing. She's elderly, Your Honor. Her memory isn't what it used to be. Margaret makes a small sound of protest, but her attorney touches her arm gently. Judge Caprio leans back in his chair, studying Brian Sullivan with an expression that's becoming colder by the minute. Mr. Sullivan, let me make sure I understand. You obtained power of attorney from your mother under the pretense that it was temporary to help her recover from a broken wrist. You promised she would live with you. Instead, you placed her in a state facility. You sold her house without properly consulting her. You kept the $280,000 in profits, and you visit her approximately once every 3 months. Does that accurately summarize the situation? Brian's confidence finally wavers. Your Honor, you're making it sound worse than it is. Am I? Then please tell me what I'm missing. You're missing the context, Your Honor. You're missing the reality of modern life. And this is where Brian Sullivan makes his catastrophic mistake. He looks at Judge Caprio, this 76-year-old judge who has spent his entire life serving others, who has shown compassion to thousands of people, who has never forgotten where he came from, and Brian says words he can never take back. Your Honor, no offense, but you're from another generation. You don't understand how expensive life is today. That house was just sitting there. My mother doesn't need it anymore. I have a family to support, college funds to build, a business to run. Someone had to make the practical decision. And with all due respect, someone who spent their whole life on a government salary probably doesn't understand the financial pressures of actually building wealth in the real world. The courtroom collectively gasps. Officer Chen takes an instinctive step forward. Attorney Rice's mouth falls open. Margaret Sullivan begins crying harder, and Judge Frank Caprio's expression transforms into something nobody in that courtroom has ever seen before. Not anger, something colder and more powerful, absolute moral authority. But before Judge Caprio can respond, a small voice from the gallery cuts through the tension. But Dad, you promised Grandma would live with us. You promised. Every head turns to see 9-year-old Tommy Sullivan standing up, tears streaming down his face, staring at his father with betrayal and confusion written across his young features. Tommy, sit down, Brian snaps, his carefully maintained composure cracking. But Tommy doesn't sit down. He takes a step forward into the aisle. You promised, Dad. You said Grandma would have the room next to mine. You said we'd have breakfast together every morning. You said we'd take care of her like she took care of you. Brian's face flushes red. Tommy, this is not the time or place. Mr. Sullivan, Judge Caprio's voice cuts through like a blade. I want to hear what your son has to say. He looks at Tommy with those compassionate eyes that have put thousands of children at ease over the years. Son, what's your name? Tommy Sullivan, sir. Your Honor, sir. The boy is nervous but determined. Tommy, how old are you? 9. I'll be 10 in July. Tommy, come forward, please. I'd like to talk to you. Tommy walks down the aisle, past his father, who looks like he wants to grab him, but doesn't dare. The boy approaches the bench, and Judge Caprio does something that makes everyone in the courtroom fall in love with him all over again. He stands up from his bench and walks around to the front, kneeling down so he's at Tommy's eye level. His 76-year-old knees protest, but he doesn't care. Tommy, thank you for being brave enough to speak up. Can you tell me about your grandmother? Tommy's words come in a rush, like he's been holding them inside for months. She's the best person in the whole world, Your Honor. She makes the best cookies. She taught me how to ride a bike. When I'm sad, she always knows what to say. She used to come to my house every week for dinner, and she'd help me with my homework and read me stories. When did that stop? Last summer, Dad said Grandma was sick and needed to go somewhere to get better. He said it would only be for a little while, and then she'd live with us forever. Did your grandmother come to live with you? Tommy shakes his head, and tears roll down his cheeks. No, Dad says the facility is better for her. But, Your Honor, I visit her every Saturday, and it's not better. She looks so sad all the time. She's gotten so skinny, and there are so many other people there who look confused and lost, and Grandma doesn't belong there. Judge Caprio puts a gentle hand on Tommy's shoulder. You visit her every Saturday? Does your father take you? No, sir. I take the bus. 2 buses. My mom gives me the money and makes sure I know the schedule. Dad doesn't know I go so much. He thinks I only go once a month. Why don't you tell your father you go every week? Tommy looks back at his father, then at Judge Caprio. His voice drops to a whisper. Because I heard Dad talking to Mom once. He said that Grandma being in the facility made everything easier. He said we didn't have to worry about taking care of her, and the money from her house would help with our life. Mom got really upset and said that wasn't right, but Dad said it was the practical thing to do. The courtroom is so silent you could hear a pin drop. Tommy, Judge Caprio says gently, I have one more question. What do you want to happen today? Tommy doesn't hesitate. I want Grandma to come live with us like Dad promised. Or if she can't do that, I want her to have her own place where she's happy and I can visit her whenever I want. And I want Dad to say he's sorry for lying to her. Judge Caprio stands up slowly, his knees creaking, but his resolve is iron solid. Thank you, Tommy. You're a very brave and honest young man. Your grandmother is lucky to have you. Tommy walks back to his seat, and his mother hugs him tightly. His father won't look at him. Judge Caprio returns to his bench, and when he speaks, his voice fills every corner of the courtroom with absolute authority. Mr. Sullivan, please stand. Brian stands, but his earlier confidence is gone. He looks pale. Mr. Sullivan, in 38 years on this bench, I have seen many things. I have seen people make mistakes out of desperation, out of ignorance, out of circumstances beyond their control. I have shown compassion to thousands of people because I understand that life is complicated and that good people sometimes make bad choices. Judge Caprio pauses, and his next words land like hammers. But what I have witnessed here today is not a mistake. It's not a bad choice made under difficult circumstances. What I have witnessed is calculated exploitation of a vulnerable elderly woman by her own son. And what makes it worse, so much worse, is that you don't even see what you've done wrong. Brian tries to speak, but Judge Caprio holds up his hand. You insulted this court by suggesting that I, because of my age, couldn't possibly understand modern financial pressures. Let me tell you something about my generation, Mr. Sullivan. We understand that some things matter more than money. We understand that you don't betray the people who sacrificed everything to raise you. We understand that dignity and honor mean something. The judge's voice grows stronger. Your mother worked 2 jobs for 30 years to give you opportunities. She saved every penny to buy a house so you would have security. She raised you alone after your father died. And when she needed you most, you betrayed her in the worst possible way. Your Honor, I was trying to help. You were not trying to help, Mr. Sullivan. If you were trying to help, you would have brought your mother to live with you as you promised. If you were trying to help, you would have consulted her before selling her house. If you were trying to help, you would have ensured she was in a quality facility, not a state-funded institution where she sleeps in hallways. Judge Caprio opens a folder on his bench. I ordered an independent investigation of Meadowbrook State Facility after reading this case file. The report came back yesterday. Would you like to know what it says? Brian doesn't answer. Meadowbrook is rated 1 star out of 5 by the State Health Department. It has repeated violations for insufficient staffing, inadequate nutrition, and poor living conditions. 3 residents have died there in the past year under circumstances that are still being investigated. This is where you placed your mother, Mr. Sullivan. This is the care you chose for her while you kept $280,000 of her money. The courtroom is filled with sounds of people crying, gasping, whispering. Your Honor, I didn't know. You didn't care to know, Mr. Sullivan. There's a difference. Judge Caprio looks at Margaret Sullivan, who sits with her hands folded, crying silently. Mrs. Sullivan, please stand if you're able. Margaret stands with her attorney's help. Mrs. Sullivan, I am so sorry for what has been done to you, and I am about to do everything in my power to make it right. He turns back to Brian. Here is my ruling. The power of attorney you obtained from your mother is hereby revoked immediately. You obtained it under false pretenses, and you have abused it egregiously. Brian's attorney starts to object, but Judge Caprio cuts him off. I'm not finished. The sale of Mrs. Sullivan's house is being investigated for fraud. Based on the evidence presented today, I am ordering you, Mr. Brian Sullivan, to immediately transfer the full amount of $280,000 plus interest, that comes to $287,450, into a trust account controlled by Mrs. Sullivan's attorney for her sole benefit. Your Honor, I don't have that kind of liquid cash. Then you will sell assets, take out loans, or do whatever is necessary. You have 30 days to comply. If you fail to comply, I will hold you in contempt of court, and you will face criminal charges for elder financial abuse. Brian looks like he might collapse. Furthermore, Mrs. Sullivan will be moved immediately to a quality-assisted living facility of her choosing. The cost will come from the funds you are returning to her. I am appointing a guardian ad litem to oversee all of her financial affairs going forward, to ensure this never happens again. Judge Caprio pauses, and his next words are the most devastating. Mr. Sullivan, you told me I don't understand financial pressure. Let me tell you what I do understand. I understand that your son Tommy has learned more about character, integrity, and love in his 9 years than you have learned in 42. That boy takes 2 buses every Saturday to visit his grandmother because he loves her. He spoke up in this courtroom because he knows right from wrong. He is ashamed of what you've done, and he should be. Brian's face crumbles. You have betrayed your mother, you have disappointed your son, and you have disgraced yourself. Money cannot buy back integrity, Mr. Sullivan, and right now, you have none. Judge Caprio looks at Tommy, who is watching with wide eyes. Tommy, come here, please. The boy approaches again, and Judge Caprio kneels down once more. Tommy, I want you to know something. What you did today took tremendous courage. You told the truth even though it was hard, even though it meant standing up to your father. That is the mark of a good person. Don't ever lose that. Thank you, Your Honor. Tommy whispers, and Tommy, I'm going to make sure you can visit your grandmother as much as you want. In fact, I'm ordering that your father must facilitate visits between you and your grandmother at least twice a week if you wish. He is not to interfere with your relationship with her in any way. Tommy's face lights up. Really? Really? Family is the most important thing in the world, and you understand that better than your father does. Judge Caprio stands and looks at Margaret. Mrs. Sullivan, my staff will work with your attorney to ensure you are moved to a proper facility within the next week. You will have your own room, your own space, and your dignity. I am also ordering that your son pay for any counseling or support services you need to recover from this experience. Thank you, Your Honor, Margaret sobs. Thank you so much. You deserve so much better than what you've received, Mrs. Sullivan, and I'm going to make sure you get it. He looks one final time at Brian Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, I hope that someday you understand what you've done. I hope you learn from your son what real love looks like. And I hope that when you're 79 years old, someone treats you with more dignity than you've shown your own mother. The gavel comes down with finality. This court is adjourned. The video of this case was posted online by someone in the gallery who recorded it on their phone. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 15 million times. Within a week, over 50 million people around the world had watched Judge Caprio defend an elderly mother and honor a brave 9-year-old boy. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people donated to a fund established for Margaret Sullivan. Over $400,000 was raised within days, more than enough to ensure she could live comfortably for the rest of her life. A luxury assisted living facility in Providence offered Margaret a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment free of charge for life. Judge Caprio reminded us what matters, the facility director said. Mrs. Sullivan represents every mother who sacrificed for their children, and she deserves the best. Brian Sullivan complied with the court order, transferring the money within the 30-day deadline. His wife filed for divorce shortly after, citing irreconcilable differences. In the divorce proceedings, she asked for and received full custody of Tommy, with Brian granted supervised visitation only. "I couldn't stay married to a man who would treat his own mother that way," she told the judge. "If he can do that to her, what would he do to us?" Tommy moved with his mother into a house 3 blocks from Margaret's new assisted living facility. He visits his grandmother every single day after school now. They do homework together, bake cookies, and watch old movies. Margaret Sullivan regained 15 of the 20 pounds she'd lost. Her hair is professionally styled now. She wears nice clothes and jewelry that Tommy's mother helped her pick out. But most importantly, she smiles again. On Tommy's 10th birthday, he asked for only one thing: to have his birthday party at Grandma's apartment so she could be there. 40 people crowded into that apartment, friends from school, Tommy's mother's family, even Officer Chen from Judge Caprio's courtroom. And in the place of honor, sitting next to Tommy, was Margaret Sullivan, wearing a party hat and laughing. Judge Caprio sent a gift, a framed photograph of Tommy speaking up in court that day, with an inscription that read, "To Tommy, who taught us all what courage looks like. Never stop standing up for what's right. Your friend, Judge Caprio." Brian Sullivan attempted to contact his mother several times through letters. Margaret read each one, and finally, 8 months after the trial, she agreed to see him. They met at her apartment with Tommy present. Brian apologized, really apologized. He'd been attending therapy and had slowly started to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. "I was so focused on money, on success, on building wealth," he told her, crying. "I forgot what really matters. I forgot that you gave me everything. I forgot that love means sacrifice. Mom, I am so, so sorry." Margaret listened, and then she said something that made Tommy cry. "Brian, I forgive you, not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. But because I'm your mother, and I will always love you. But things have to be different now. You have to be different." "I know, Mom. I know." Their relationship is being rebuilt slowly. Brian sees Tommy every other weekend now, and sometimes they visit Margaret together. It's not perfect. There are awkward moments and painful memories. But there's also hope, because Tommy sees his father trying, and Margaret sees her son learning what she thought she'd taught him long ago, that people matter more than money, that integrity matters more than success, and that family is everything. A year after the trial, Judge Frank Caprio retired from the bench. His final day in court was covered by news stations from around the world. Thousands of people whose lives he'd touched over 38 years came to honor him. Margaret Sullivan and Tommy were given special seats in the front row. When Judge Caprio gave his farewell address, he spoke about justice, compassion, and the importance of treating every person with dignity. And then he looked directly at Margaret and Tommy. There are moments in a judge's career that remind you why this work matters. Cases that break your heart and restore your faith in humanity at the same time. Margaret Sullivan and her grandson Tommy gave me one of those moments. He smiled at them, and his voice grew thick with emotion. "Margaret, you taught me that strength isn't about how much you can endure alone. It's about how much grace you can show when others fail you. And Tommy, you taught me that sometimes the most powerful voice in a courtroom belongs to a child who simply tells the truth." The courtroom erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Tommy approached Judge Caprio and handed him a card. Inside, in careful 9-year-old handwriting, it read, Thank you for saving my grandma. You're my hero. When I grow up, I want to be like you. Love, Tommy. Judge Caprio kept that card on his desk for the rest of his life.